Hi, everybody. Welcome to Elle Said What, and I'm Elle, and hopefully the volume is great. And if you happen to come by this live stream, do me a favor and hit the like button. And if you want to continue the discussion, share the live stream. And I thought that this morning would be a great time to have a discussion about something that comes up, a subject that comes up every so often in my world between myself and my friends or myself and my colleagues. And that discussion revolves around the question: should death row inmates be allowed to donate their organs? Now, the topic came up because we were discussing a man, Christian Longo. Christian Longo was convicted of strangling his wife and murdering their three small children, and he was on death row. And Longo said that one way that he could make amends. Hi, Susanna, good to see you. Thank you. Longo said that one way he could make amends is if he could donate his organs. And we all know that an organ donor recipient's life can be saved through an organ donor. Minimally, a person's quality of life could be improved. Maximally, their life could be saved. And so, right off the top, the United States Department of Prisons forbid organ donation posthumously after death. There's so the death row inmate would have to, or any inmate would have to donate their organ while alive. Well, the United States Center for Disease Control said that an inmate's, just by virtue of being an inmate, that they are high risk of infectious disease. So it's a no for them. I'm curious as to how much input the organ donor recipient has in deciding who gets to donate organs, because that's really who it would matter to most. I'd like to say that I don't know anyone in need of receipt of an organ. I'm not in a situation where I or someone I care about is in a situation where they need an organ to survive or to improve their quality of life. But what my question is, how much does an organ donor recipient know at all about who it is that donated the kidney they received, the corneas they received, unless, of course, it was set up to be someone they know. Bone marrow, I think, is often family members. I think kidneys, oftentimes, or a kidney is oftentimes donated to a family member. But there was a time in this country where a few people slipped through. And Gary Gilmore's name is infamous in the crime community. Gilmore he was in and out of prison his entire life, what you'd call a jailbird, I guess, a repeat offender. And Gilmore went on a violent crime spree after a breakup with his girlfriend. And he made headlines for all sorts of reasons. for his crime spree, for, I mean, he murdered two Mormons, robbing them. So, so Gilmore says that he wants to donate his organs. And he was sentenced to death, and he requested to be put to death by firing squad. Now, I agree with whoever said that organ donation and dying by firing squad is not compatible. But Gary Gilmore was allowed to donate his organs. He donated his eyes. There was a song called Gary Gilmore's Eyes. So Gary Gilmore, who was a violent offender by his own admission, I'm sorry, is the volume? Can you hear? So Gary Gilmore, who was a violent offender by his own admission, was allowed to donate his organs. Could you put yourself in that position? Could you imagine knowing that you are in need of a kidney, or you're in need of corneas, whatever it may be, and that the donor is Gary Gilmore, a very violent offender? What about Velma Barfield? Velma Barfield was convicted of poisoning her boyfriend to death, but law enforcement, Velma's own siblings, family, friends, all believe that Velma poisoned her own mother to death. She was the caretaker for two sick elderly people. It's believed she killed them. So that's four people. Velma's a serial killer. And Velma was allowed to donate her organs. Does the crime matter? Does the fact that it's a death row inmate is the organ donor, or the fact that it's an inmate at all? Does the crime matter? If the inmate is a nonviolent offender and, of course, is donating while alive, should that be allowed? Because most people would say, oh, maybe a nonviolent offender until they or someone they know is the victim of a nonviolent offense. Harassment that's not physical, electronic cyber harassment is nonviolent. I wonder if those people would say a nonviolent offender, while incarcerated, should be able to donate their organ. I think, that there are people who argue that unless the recipient knows the donor, and even if the recipient does know the donor, there are secrets that any donor could have that an organ donor recipient would not know about. Should it be public at all? Should somebody on the organ donor list be allowed to turn down an organ because of the person who donated the organ? Well, I think what's really interesting is that even though all states in the United States don't allow death row inmates to donate, if they're death row state, to donate their organs, that organ donation has occurred. And I think that the Nelson brothers in Delaware are a very, very interesting story. The Nelson brothers, there's Well, Shelton brothers. There's Nelson Shelton and there's Stephen Shelton. And Nelson and Stephen, along with their cousin, was convicted of robbery and murder, and all three were sentenced to death. And this is around the time that they were arrested, 1992. There's Stephen. I think there's a resemblance between Stephen and Nelson. And their mother, Vessa, who by all accounts was not a good mother. Stephen and Nelson were two of 12 children. Their father lost his legs in an industrial accident. There was no money. Three-bedroom home. The children were in and out of juvenile detention as young as 10 years old, skipping school as young as 10 years old, being bullied. Vessa was an alcoholic. Her children said that she was abusive. And while Nelson and Stephen were incarcerated, Vessa needed a kidney. Well, Nelson Shelton he wasn't a match for his mother. Even though he and his brother were on death row, they were allowed to be tested to be a match for their mother. And Nelson was not a match. And Nelson actually waived his appeals and he was executed in 1995, just 3 years after the crime. So Stephen did turn out to be a match. Stephen did turn out to be a match for Vessa, and he donated his kidney to her. And Stephen, by the way, Stephen and their cousin, they didn't waive their appeals like Nelson did. They fought in appellate court. They got their death sentences waived, and they made a deal with the state. They're serving long sentences, but they're alive. I don't know about Will, but Stephen was a viable candidate and was allowed to donate his mother a kidney. So don't waste my organs. What do you all think? Should death row inmates be allowed to donate their organs? And I'm going to tell you, these are violent criminals. The Nelson brothers were in and out of foster care. There's always an origin story. The Nelson brothers were in and out of foster care. Even by their own accounts, their family was abusive. Their cousin, who was convicted with them, he said that his parents were abusive, that his father was semi abusive when he was drunk. But then, you have inmates like Ronald Phillips, who committed a horrible, horrible crime against his girlfriend's 3-year-old child. He wanted to donate his organs. He was executed in 2017. He wasn't allowed to donate his organs. But this is a discussion that comes up every so often in my world, and I wanted to share it. So, what do you all think? Does it matter who the organ donor is? Should death row inmates be allowed to donate their organs after death? Should the recipients of these organs have a say so in this discussion? I know that I read one law official say that he didn't believe that Longo was sincere. Does sincerity matter? If it's your life on the line, God forbid, your loved one's life on the line, does sincerity of the donor matter? And like I said, does the crime matter? So, if you come across this live stream, do me a favor, hit the like button, share your thoughts. I'd love to know your opinion, and continue the discussion. Share the stream. Thank you. Until next time.